Hey guys, this is gonna be my second vlog for the second chapter. The second chapter is called The True Knowledge of God. So I just want to talk a little bit about this chapter and what this chapter is about in my book. So what is the true knowledge of God? Okay, so what is the true knowledge of God? The true knowledge of God is basically knowing God. Okay? Now, if you know God, you will see God. If you don't know what the color white is, you cannot see white. If I say, hey, look around you, do you see any color white? And you don't even have the knowledge of whites, you cannot see white. So when you know this, you can see it. And the people will say, how come I don't see God around me? It's because your knowledge, you don't know God. So how can you see God if you don't know God? What is the true knowledge of God? So in this chapter, I'm talking about the true knowledge of God is understanding that you're coming to knowing to the full truth of God living inside of you. And so therefore, by default, when you know God has become one in you for you to have one existence and one image, by default, you see everywhere God. Because you know that you're one image of life. Everywhere that you see image of life, there is God inside of it, inside that person or anywhere. So when you come to the awakening of the true knowledge of God, everything to you is God. Because before you had the knowledge of God, you don't know God. There's no way you can see God. So from my background experience, I only saw God based on my knowledge. So when I saw someone act particular, like do religious activity, that's when I saw God. And when I didn't see anybody doing religious activity, I didn't see God. And it's because of my knowledge that made me see good and evil. Okay? So now that I've come to the true knowledge of God, in this chapter, I'm trying to explain to you that you don't see God because you don't know God. And the only way you can see God is if you know the true knowledge of God. Okay? So like I mentioned earlier, if you don't have the knowledge of what the color white is, you cannot see white. So I'm going to ask you right now. For instance, let's create this scenario. I put you in a room, okay, and I ask you, hey, do you see the color white around you? And you don't even know what white is. You're not going to see white at all. You'll be like that, and you're blinded because it's right in front of you, okay? And I come to you and I whisper to you, I'm going to tell you how the color white looks like. And the color white looks like this. Okay? And I say, open your eyes. You're going to see white everywhere because now you have the knowledge of what white is. This is the same, symbolic meaning of understanding the true knowledge of God. The reason why you don't see God is because you don't know God. And if you can't see God, you're going to die one day. Because basically God's trying to show us that He's already here. He's already living in us and through us, and everywhere that has life is God. So if you don't see that, the nature of that is for you to die. But if you begin to see God everywhere because you know God has become one in you, so by default you know your image is God's image, and everywhere that has image as God's image, you are consciously, automatically seeing God. You know, some people are trying to be conscious of God forcefully, without knowing the truth. But if you know the truth, by default, you're automatically conscious of God. Your consciousness is constantly seeing, okay? And consciously seeing of your conscious can only be based on your foundation of your knowledge. So if your knowledge is based on good and evil, and you know what good and evil is, your conscious, or what you consistently see, will be only seeing good and evil. Okay, so the knowledge of God, the true knowledge of God, is knowing that God has become one in you. And once you know this, you begin to see your image as one image of God. And therefore, if it is one image of God, how can you die? So you're saying that God can die? If God is awakened in you, there's no way that God can die. And this is how you have an eternal image, because you know the Spirit is eternal, which created your image. We wonder why we are aging. We wonder why we're dying. It's because we don't know God, the true knowledge of God. And the true knowledge of God is knowing that He has become one in you. And if you fail to realize that, you're always going to see the source outside. You're always going to make the source outside. And the nature of anything existing out of your spirit will create a life of suffering, sacrificing, unrest, and trying to always survive. Your food that you're eating, your water that you're drinking is not your source. It's just an experience. But if you create the source to be on the outside and I remove that source, guess what? You're going to suffer because you have created a reality that the source is outside of you. The source is not outside of you. Come to know the knowledge of God existing inside of you. This is not about religion. This is about truth. This is not about you following something that I'm telling you that you don't know. You already know this, okay? And you are coming back to this truth. And the truth is this, you already knew it since you were born. But because the world has fed you all this clutter, it has covered up the truth. And I'm just here to remove the clutter so you can see transparently that your image is already the image of God. All right now.